was not there to cause violence. I was there for a peaceful protest. And I hope that the jury can see past all what's been said and see the truth. I mean, at the end of the day, it's up to them. I'm here. I've done my time for over a year now with conditions, and we'll see what the verdict comes out to.
After deciding to bring firewood for outdoor demonstrators near the Coutts blockade last year, James Sowery was charged with dangerous driving and assault with a weapon. Sowery says he's innocent, and last week we got the results of his 5-day jury trial in Lethbridge, Alberta.
Yeah, we just wanted to see what was going on. Couldn't see, nobody else had all these different ideas. Families going, oh, that's all bull. So it's not what I seen on the news. So we decided to come take a look for ourselves. Yeah. That's awesome.
I think it's great. I mean, you got bouncy castles, you got a stage over there where you got live music, you got people gathered trying to stay warm as it cools off and stuff. More Canadian flags than I've ever seen in my life, right? It's better than Canada Day, it's better than the Olympics. It's awesome, man. People are happy.
Syd Fizzard for Rebel News, and last week I went to this trial of a Coutts blockade supporter. You may recall the Coutts blockade, a peaceful demonstration against vaccination mandates and COVID restrictions, which coincided with the Freedom Convoy movement in Ottawa, taking place last year between January and February. Here in Alberta, the sentiment was so strong that provincial COVID restrictions were lifted during this 18-day demonstration. So what has brought you guys out here?
Freedom. That's what it's about. Yeah, we just wanted to see what was going on. Couldn't see, nobody else had all these different ideas. Families going, oh, that's all bull. So it's not what I seen on the news. So we decided to come take a look for ourselves. Yeah. That's awesome.
Well, I wanted to come and see for myself. Come all the way from Edmonton, Alberta, and I want to give my support and stand behind what we're all thinking about is freedom.
I think it's great. I mean, you got bouncy castles, you got a stage over there where you got live music, you got people gathered trying to stay warm as it cools off and stuff. More Canadian flags than I've ever seen in my life, right? It's better than Canada Day, it's better than the Olympics. It's awesome, man. People are happy, you know? So yeah, it's great.
We came out from BC. I'm a truck driver, and I was double vaccinated, and then I got COVID, so it's pretty important to me that I don't take any more. And just for all the nurses and all the healthcare workers and all the people who've lost their jobs over this terrible mandates. The stuff doesn't work, and there's time to throw the garbage can.
And since I got here, I'm talking to different people from different. To talk to a man from Poland, I talked to a young gal from China, and I talked to another gentleman from Romania. And when they say you gotta hold the line, because they came from that, it really. It sticks, right? It sticks, you betcha.
On February 9th last year, James filled his hydrovac truck with firewood for those facing the harsh winter at these outside protests. Then, he drove 4.5 hours to deliver his unique payload. James decided to park his truck and stay for a few more days. But on February 14th, he got a call for a job, at which point he attempted to leave demonstrations with the work truck he had brought with him. Pulling just outside of the demonstration zone to complete his pre-trip logs and vehicle inspection, James saw an RCMP vehicle parked on the road ahead. After completing his pre-trip checks, James began to gear up his 18-gear work truck to approach and maintain highway speeds. Not thinking that the single RCMP vehicle ahead, with no officer standing by and no signage that it was a check stop, Sowery continued to approach highway speeds. Near the final seconds of Sowery's approach, he says an officer hopped out of the front driver's side seat and gave him a wave goodbye. Sowery then heard a noise coming from the front left of his truck, which he thought merited pulling over. As Sowery began to do so, he looked in his mirrors to see flashing police lights in the distance. Once Sowery had brought his 50,000-pound truck to a full stop, he exited, got on his knees, and placed his hands in the air. The arresting officer called this a, quote, high-risk takedown, and had drawn his weapon at Sowery during the arrest. Later, Sowery would find out he hit an RCMP pylon and would be charged with assault with a weapon against the officer he thought was waving goodbye, named Constable Cornicky. James was being represented by Olivia Manzer of Tratch Law, crowdfunded through your generous donations at thedemocracyfund.ca. Now, today we bring you an interview with James directly to find out his side of events, largely because previously two branches of the state, RCMP and the CBC, both put out information that alleged Sowery to be extreme in some fashion or another. Quote, "The vehicle accelerated and drove at the officers, who had to run out of the way to avoid getting hit," said the RCMP in its release, the CBC finds. Although there was only one constable at the check stop when Sowery drove by, not multiple officers. RCMP also put out a news release on Sowery's arrest, saying, quote, "The driver accelerated and drove towards our members," end quote, listing Sowery as the 13th individual to be arrested in connection to the Coutts border protest. This news release was an update to a previous news release which showcased 11 arrests and the seizure of weapons from a small organized group within the larger Coutts protests, which took place miles away from the location James Sowery found himself at during these demonstrations. And as for the CBC, they strongly implied James had some, quote, "ties to white supremacist group," even though their follow-up article on his jury trial we're talking about today completely dropped this formerly bolded assertion. Well, today we're going to talk to James himself to get his perspective on the situation and these allegations that have been put forward. We're also going to get into the court proceedings themselves, then the jury's ruling on Sowery's charges. Since we were there in person thanks to your generous support at rebelfieldreports.com, I can bring you what I thought were some of the more interesting things said on the record for this case. I'm going to do that shortly, but first, here's the interview with James, so he can tell you his side of the story.
My name is James Sowery. I'm 37 years old from Killam, Alberta. It was a protest against COVID-19 mandates and restrictions and, political views. I got a call from some friends saying that they put on a fire ban down there. I felt I had an opportunity I could help out. So I filled the back of my back truck up with firewood and took it down to Milk River. I was expecting a protest. I wasn't expecting the size of the protest when I got there. Pretty neat. It was an experience I'll never forget. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people, some weekends, I can't even tell you how many. I got a call for a job back up north around Didsbury, and I decided that my time there was complete. So I decided to take my hydrovac out of the lineup and head towards work. I pulled up to a spot that was a check stop, and I didn't take it as a check stop per se. I pulled my truck over about 350 meters roughly from this check stop and did a pre-trip, and then I proceeded to go, noticing that the officer was in his car. Just before I got to the check stop, the officer exited his vehicle and stood beside his driver's door and waved, and I took it as a sign of goodbye and kept going, and I managed to clip a pylon on my way by, and here we are. Since then, the truck has been parked, had to gotten other work. My conditions state that I can only drive for work purposes, so it's difficult to get to and from certain job sites. The officers involved, I didn't know them before the incident. I had nothing against them. Even to this day, I watched them all give their testimonies. I have nothing against them. Down at the blockade there, it was all love, peace, unity. There was never an act of violence down there. To have anything against police officers, that's not my thing. I have a Class 1 driver's license. I've been pulled over many times. I've been very cooperative. No, I don't see anything negative towards law enforcement. I mean, that day was Valentine's Day. Kids came out with roses and handed them out to police officers. I witnessed some officers, tears coming down their face from happiness, and, seeing kids running around playing hockey. Everybody has their views, their points. Do I believe in white supremacy and what went on? No, absolutely not. I was not there to cause violence. I was there for a peaceful protest and, be present. I hope that the jury can see past all what's been said and see the truth. At the end of the day, it's up to them. I'm here. I've done my time for over a year now with conditions, and we'll see what the verdict comes out to. I'm expecting to come with not guilty. I am not guilty, so yeah, that's my expectations, and I do believe a positive outcome.
And did the Democracy Fund do their part to help you with this?
Oh yeah, the Democracy pulled through in great ways. I was down to the last couple of weeks when they stepped up to the plate there and helped me fund the rest of my lawyer fees. My lawyer's amazing. I'd recommend her to anybody.
As for the incident itself and the others involved, here's some of what was said during the court's proceedings. From Constable Corey Cornicky, the officer who Sowery allegedly attempted to hit, had this to say about the incident. At the time of this incident, I was in the northbound lanes, and I was the only member in the northbound lanes. We received some information of a possible threat to protesters and peaceful people, and a decision was made. We had information on vehicles coming, so we beefed up the southbound side and had more members on the southbound side. And I even turned my vehicle to be watching the southbound side as well. Christopher John Kirby, the officer who performed the high-risk takedown of Sowery on the highway, said this: "I heard a clunk, and I looked across the highway. What I seen was right. I could see under Constable Cornicky's vehicle, just my line of sight there. I could see pieces of a traffic cone, or cones, smashed in on the roadway. Constable Cornicky came around his vehicle, looked pretty frantic. He was grabbing for his radio mic, trying to call out to us. He radioed something, that guy tried to hit him. The truck pulled over and stopped. The driver exited the truck, walked back slightly, got on his knees, put his hands up in the air. I had my service pistol drawn at the time. It was what was called a high-risk takedown. I was concerned for my safety from what I had just witnessed. Initially, yeah, I feared for my safety, but once I got to dealing with him and that, he was good to deal with. When I was reading his rights, he did not understand what he was arrested for." Though there were many back and forth moments during the proceedings, especially between Sowery and the prosecutor, I'll share with you this interaction they had over the nature of Sowery's intentions. And I put it to you that you decided that you would send a message as you left. No, there was no message leaving. What was the purpose of a message when I was out there shaking hands of other police officers? As for closing arguments, Sowery's lawyer put forward the following. In that very short period of time, Mr. Sowery apparently did not interpret Constable Cornicky's actions properly, but I submit that is what he has done wrong, here and nothing more. This does not rise to criminal behavior. In contrast to this, the prosecutor had his own take on events, which follows. Mr. Sowery drove toward Constable Cornicky in a manner in which he either attempted, less likely, to hit the officer, or threatened, by his manner of driving, more likely, to hit him. And he caused Constable Cornicky to believe on reasonable grounds that Mr. Sowery could and would hit him. Indeed, the officer may well have been hurt, but for his wise decision to get out of the way. This was assault with a weapon, count 1. Before the jury began their deliberations, the judge issued his final remarks as well, notably highlighting the burden of proof threshold for which Sowery could be found guilty. The possible verdicts you might reach are either not guilty or guilty. With respect to each of the charges, remember that for any finding of guilt, you must be satisfied that the Crown has proved all the essential elements of the offense beyond a reasonable doubt. As the fourth day of Sowery's trial concluded, Sowery was found guilty by the jury of both offenses beyond a reasonable doubt: assault with a weapon and dangerous driving. Now, we didn't get to hear much from the jury other than that, which is why we reached out to his lawyer, Olivia Manzer, to get her reaction and to find out if an appeal is expected. The interesting thing about a jury trial compared to a judge-alone trial is you do not get to hear the deliberations and are not privy to the reasons for the jury's decision. Our next step is to prepare for sentencing, and we will definitely be considering whether we want to entertain an appeal between now and sentencing, which should have some time in June or July 2023. Just moments after this verdict came through, we interviewed Sowery to get his reaction on the results.
I went in, they came up with a verdict, the jury did, and they decided that I'm guilty.
And what's your reaction to that?
Pretty shocked at the moment.
Yeah.
It's not the outcome I was expecting at all.
And what are the next steps, I guess?
I gotta wait for the sentencing, see what the time is, and then try and file an appeal for it.
As mentioned, the Democracy Fund has been assisting James with his legal fees. To help crowdfund his defense, head to thedemocracyfund.ca and see about their tax-deductible donations. In June, sentencing is expected to begin for Sowery, unless an appeal alters this course. For Rebel News, Syd Fizzard. The only way I was able to cover this 5-day jury trial, which ended up being 4 days, was through your donations at rebelfieldreports.com, which allow us to cover the news wherever it may take us.